Welcome to Unfiltered Finance. We have my, I think I'm going to refer to you as my friend as opposed to somebody I've done business with. I've known you close to 30 years. And
Too bad. I'm your friend. It's too bad. I'm like,
I know. Well, you know what?
I'm a little bit like toe fungus for you, Geffner. You can't get rid of me. You've tried unsuccessfully to get rid of me, but here I still am in your life 30
And
years
all
later.
the love you give me, I am very, very appreciative
I
of.
adore
And
you. Know, you
and
know
my
I adore
therapist
you.
thanks you. My therapist thanks you.
Yes, you know
So
I
wait,
adore
welcome to
you.
Unfiltered Finance. We have Anthony Scaramucci, who some might argue does not need an introduction, but we're going to hop into this. So my almost all of my forays involving politics actually are tied to you. So the first question I want to go to is the election results in New York City. I obviously know you have a relationship with Governor Cuomo.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously I know you know Whitney Tilson as well, who ran.
Mm-hmm.
The results for me were really upsetting on so many different levels. What are your thoughts about our impending, our mayor that's starting on January 1st, his new job, his experience and its effect on Wall Street, its effect on crypto, and its any other macro and micro effects that you see it having?
Okay, well, I mean, I'm going to step back. First of all, thank you both. I adore you and John. It's a big honor to be on with you guys. But I'm going to step back for a second because it's appalling, and I don't like anti-Semitism. You know, I'm a philo-Semite, and I'm a big supporter of Israel, and I don't like anti-Semitism. And it's sort of odd to me that 33% or some large number of the Jewish community did actually vote for Zoran Mandami. So we have to unpack that as well. But I think we have failed these younger people, Ron. And so hear me out for a second, because John is a little bit younger than the two of us. But if you're born 1946 to 64, you're a little younger than me. That baby boomer generation, it undertaxed, it overspent, it overpromised, it underdelivered. Let me just set the scene. George Washington to George W. Bush, $7 trillion of deficit spending. Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, $31 trillion of deficit spending. So I don't know what we're doing. Deficit spending, this is unfiltered finance. The late and very great Milton Friedman once said that deficit spending is unfunded tax liability. Somebody's paying it. And so we've decided that we're going to pay it through the most pernicious, most regressive form of tax. That's inflation. And so inflation hurts the people that don't have assets the most, the lower and middle income people. We've destroyed these people. They can't afford houses. They watch a pot roast go from $9 to $38 in 4 years at the local supermarket. And Mondani is a very clever politician. He ran on one concept, affordability. So when they pegged him on anti-Semitism, or they pegged him on democratic socialism, or they pegged him on, no, it's too expensive. I'm running on affordability. It's very similar to Trump. Trump ran on immigration. Trump had a simplistic message, lots of other bells and whistles, but immigration. So this kid ran on affordability. And by the way, I'm going to stipulate to both of you, he is right. Now, he's absolutely wrong about the potential policies that he wants to put in place to handle affordability. He's actually going to make things worse and potentially impair the city and have rising crime rates and a lot of disorganization in the city due to his inexperience. But you can't argue with the statement of where we are for the younger people. And let me give one stat before I let you guys talk, okay? Average age of a home buyer, my generation, 29. It's now 49, okay? And it's because they can't afford it, guys. So so if we keep this up, you're going to get hard right Republican populist nationalism or hard left democratic socialism verging on
really
communism.
where we're at, because that was really the next
That's
question.
where we're at. That's where we're at, sir. So that's my 2 cents on it. But you can't say that the kid didn't run on a resonant. By the way, when they pegged him, well, here's what you said about Jews 2 years ago. Here's what you said. He got the gun back on the bird of affordability. Mm-hmm. And so even though he's a weak guy and he's got a lot of baggage, he had a. By the way, go look at the crosstabs. He didn't win in Staten Island, but he won in every other borough. I think he lost on the Upper East Side, but he almost won in every neighborhood. And if you added Sliwa and Cuomo, he beat them. He beat the combined vote tally of Sliwa and Cuomo.
Yep.
So those are the facts, guys, And so now the question is, can we work with them and Will he listen? And is he
Yeah.
arrogant, inexperienced, or is he willing to be coachable and experienced?
And sorry, John, just to follow up that one point, I understand how he got to office, and it makes complete sense with regard to affordability. I have children in their 20s. My youngest highlights for me how they are the first generation to have it worse off than their prior generations. And I used to dismiss her thoughts to some degree. I'd listen, but I didn't see the world that same way. I just viewed it as like, you got to wait your turn, so to speak. But it's resonating more and more with me. And it goes also, and we'll get to it later, the Lost Boys, which I know I've been receiving those emails from you. Unemployment within the age range of 20 to 24 is higher than regular unemployment across America. But what do you see the fallout is from your conversations with people in the financial services industry? Is it more people are crying, like some people saying if Trump was elected, they're going to leave the country and go to Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I imagine very few, if any, did.
Yeah.
I've heard the same complaint. If Mondani got elected, they're going to leave New York City. I do know one or two people that are doing it, whether it's correlated or not.
Yeah.
They say it is, but I don't know if it is.
Well, I mean, listen, I mean, we lost 600,000 New Yorkers in the last 3 years. They've migrated to places like Nashville, Tennessee. Most of them went to Florida. Some went to Texas. They are seeking out lower tax states, lower tax havens. And unfortunately, what we all know on this call is that it's the very wealthy that have mobility. You know, some of the hard work laborers, you know, they don't have the mobility. And so they'll stay even though things have crippled them in terms of their affordability. But you know these statistics, but it's worth sharing. 1% of the New Yorkers pay 48% of the income taxes in the city. And so if you lose a couple 100,000 people, you're really impairing the tax base. And no matter what tax increases he or Kathy Hochul tries to put in place, you're always better off searching, like Mayor Bloomberg did, for economic growth. Leave the tax rates the same, get economic growth, you get higher tax revenues.
It makes me think of Argentina, by the way, the wage spiral inflation that occurred there in the, I think,
Exactly.
1940s.
Exactly. So we know throughout history, these attempts, they sound very good to the voter. Okay, it's like a cure-all. It sounds costless. It sounds painless. But then, you know, the truth of the matter is all of us know there's no free lunch. So to me, I would say to you that most New Yorkers are not going to leave. There's a lot of construction in New York, a lot of cranes up. Whatever you think of Eric Adams, Commissioner Tisch, alongside of Eric Adams, have generally done a good job of containing and getting crime under control. The streets are marginally cleaner. I mean, de Blasio was a horrific mayor. We all know that. He crippled the city after a halcyon period of Mike Bloomberg. But the city's gotten better, and it's not Detroit. It's not San Francisco. It is a resilient city. And let's face it, the people that come to the city, it's an as Mike Bloomberg once described to me. I sat on his New York City Financial Services Advisory Board for 4 years. And Mike once said in one of these meetings, which I'll never forget, he says, this is an emerging nation. This is an emerging market. Go look at the complexity and the diversity of the different people that arrive in New York. They're coming from 160 different countries, and a result of which there's an entrepreneurial hunger here. Those people are trying to get ahead here. They want their kids to do better than themselves. And so don't forget the culture of New York is different from these other cities. And so I think the city's resilient. I think the city will survive him. If he turns towards a communist move, or even to get some, you know, taxes through that Hochul has to approve, he'll impair the city, he'll hurt the city. Some people will leave the city. But I think the city's very corrective. I think he'll get knocked out of office very quickly. Now, the flip side is, you know, he's met with some of these CEOs, Wall Street CEOs, and some people have come out of those meetings saying it's been constructive. He could, if he wants to, he could become a very successful politician, guys, and pivot to the middle. He could surprise everybody. He could have campaigned on the left, and he could pivot to the middle. He's saying he's going to keep Commissioner Tisch. I hope he does that. I think that would be very positive for the city. But we'll have to see. If he decides to pivot to the middle, guys, you know, we'll be okay. If he stays hard left, we're going to lose people, but we're not going to lose everybody. I was at a Tiger 21 event last night. You know, it's a group of very wealthy, successful entrepreneurs. And I said, okay, I got to have a show of hands here. How many people are leaving as a result of the mayor's electoral success, mayor-elect? Very few people said they were leaving. And by the way, you know this, Ron, because you have a place in Florida, or you travel to Florida
Yeah,
often. I don't
I
know.
do travel there though. Yes.
Okay, all right, but I know Ron. I mean, John may not travel to Florida. I don't know your personal
I
circumstance.
have a place. I have a place in Florida too.
Okay, you have a place.
I'm gonna turn the lights out on this city. I'm never leaving.
Okay, so that's what I say. I told that to Spike Lee. I'm turning the lights out with you, Spike. We're going to be
Yeah,
here.
I got
This is
that.
my
I got that from you. Yeah, I'm
this,
never leaving this.
this is my
you know what,
city. I'm paying the taxes. I'm
Anthony?
going to stay. I'm going to try to work on the problems.
I'm Brooks in Shawshank Redemption. Remember the old guy who didn't want to
100,
leave prison? I'm institutionalized.
100,
I can't mow a lawn.
100,
Like, I'm not mowing a lawn. It's not gonna
100%. And so you and I are the same that way, but I'll say something even further.
happen.
I know guys like Tepper living in Miami, moved back to New Jersey. So the tri-state metropolitan area, which
Yeah.
makes up just under 10% of the GDP of the United States. So we need to remember that, okay? The tri-state metropolitan area, 19 million people, 10% of the GDP of the United States, right here in this area, okay? Most people like it here. They don't want to leave. They have their sports teams, even though our sports teams suck. They have all this affinity to the area. And I'm not leaving. You're not leaving. I don't know. Ron, are you a taxpayer up here? Are you a New Jersey taxpayer? Where are you?
I run a business here. I pay unincorporated business tax. I pay a lot of money
Right,
to
me
New York
too.
City. I was born in Brooklyn.
Right.
I
Me
spent my
too.
entire adult career working in New York. A lot of my friends and family are here.
So to me, we're staying. Let's help the young mayor. Let's sometimes people that have prejudices. Listen, I grew up, as you guys know, I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood. Okay, I've been to more bar mitzvahs than christenings. Okay, I'm a Philo Semite. Okay, and I want to be there to support, and I want to be there to care for, protect the Jewish community. As a libertarian, somebody that believes in Western liberalism and individualism, the Jews are the first domino. I gave this speech at the Republican Jewish Coalition in 2017. Sheldon Adelson, after I got fired from the White House, he was a lovely guy, and he invited me to give the keynote address. There were 20 senators in the room and all these different politicians, and I talked about the way I see the Jewish community as a non-Jew, as a goy. And to me, it is the first domino in the tippling of freedom. And so you have to protect the Jewish community. You have to protect the Jewish community here in the United States and around the world. And if Mondami doesn't understand that, let's get him educated. Okay, let's get him up to speed on that. I'm not saying the government of Israel is perfect. And I don't think if you criticize the government of Israel for certain actions, it does not make you anti-Semitic. Okay, I just don't think it does. Having said that, okay, let's educate people that are anti-Semitic and make them less so, because I have visited, of the 200 countries in the UN, I have visited 70 of them, including Iraq and Afghanistan on troop support missions. And I have found that we have way more in common than what separates us, whether we're black, brown, yellow, red, doesn't matter the color, sexual orientation.
Listen, people are people.
People are people.
And you can't squeeze out them. John, you were going to say something, though. I've been watching you fight at the bit here.
Look, this is a good segue into what I wanted to talk about, which is how we have these educational conversations. Because one thing I've always admired about you, Anthony, you had a comment around politics. You talked about giving people an elegant on-ramp. Your political adversaries, how do you give them a dignified on-ramp? I've had some conversations. So to a lesser degree than you, because I have these books written about me, a lot of young people come to me for mentorship and advice. So I have a lot of young people, Gen Z, even Gen Alpha now, who come to me for life advice.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of conversations about Mondami's economic policies, not his social policy, economic policies, because I wanted to distinguish between what was an opinion and what was fact.
Right.
And what I struggled with is these are not dumb kids. They know intuitively after a conversation that these price control policies, they just don't work. Mathematically, economically, scientifically don't work. They don't care. That's what really I struggled with. So I'm struggling, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this. How do we, because even the term education sounds a little bit patronizing, right? So how do we win them over on just the facts. Forget about we may never see eye to eye on some of the social issues, but the tariffs or taxes, price controls don't work. We know this. We know we have tons of academic evidence and tons of empirical evidence that tell us this. How do we do a better job of bridging that discussion?
Well, it's foundational though, John. See, so again, the problem with everything right now is that there's no short-term solution. So if I said to you that we eroded our civic educational learning over the last 35 years, you're not going to restore it in 2 minutes. And so it's foundational. If you teach people about their civics, and you teach people how to think, and you teach them about the brilliance of the Constitution and the checks and balances that have led to this great meritocratic system of aspiration, whereby having no tyranny, having no king, okay, you have this flat system, and then you teach people about economics and you teach people about the society, then there's no debate. The problem is we have a lot of uneducated people. So if somebody says to them, well, the other country's paying the tariffs or it's an external revenue service, they may believe it until they go to the supermarket or they go to the car dealership. And so, we're now there. It's 3 quarters, 9 months into the tariff discussion, and you're now seeing it creep up into prices, impair earnings, slow down growth, incremental employees are not getting hired. And guess what's happening? The tariffs are a form of tax. And then, what did we fight with? Why did the colonies break from Great Britain? It was no taxation without representation. So the question now before the Supreme Court, are we going to allow the president to use emergency authorization to raise taxes on the American people without their congressional leaders voting on it? I think it's pretty clear cut that it's taxation without representation. Now, the court's been politicized, so we'll see what they do, whether they side with or against Trump. I do notice that there are people buying They're buying rebates at discounts in the marketplace, from poorer companies that have paid these tariffs. They need to get a rebate. They may be selling their rebates potentially at 10 cents on the dollar right now. So there's a school of people on Wall Street that think that this is going to get reversed. But I think it's a foundational thing. So if you said to me, what do we have to do? Well, we have to improve the educational system, and we have to flatten the K through 12 educational system. And what I mean by flattening it is actually raising it up and then flattening it. Equal standards around the country in public school education. I think that's the number one thing. Secondary things, they're fixable. Like the deficit is fixable. Anybody tells you it's not fixable, it's totally fixable. I can take you through a 5-step plan that could fix the deficit. However, it's a 15 to 20-year fix. It's not a 5-minute fix.
Right.
So the politicians run on pablum. They run on lies. They run on boastful statements. Again, Donald Trump said he was going to balance the budget in 2017. He's got 4 years. He'll balance the budget. He spent $8.1 trillion of deficit spending. So that was, again, George W. Bush all the way back to George Washington, $7 trillion. In one presidential term, $8.1 trillion. So you can fix it. The real question back to you is, when will the madness stop? Because if a person's uneducated and Mondani gets to the microphone and says, we're going to have free buses, we're going to have free this and free that, and even though the grocery stores in Venezuela and Cuba under socialism are empty, we're going to have free grocery stores or whatever he was talking about, government-owned, state-subsidized grocery stores. Okay, well, it doesn't work. Okay, and we know the economic efficiencies are tied to capitalism. Capitalism has been the story that has led to more people being lifted out of poverty, billions of people, than anything else. Look at North Korea versus South Korea.
Right.
Look at a satellite picture of those.
You're talking about the Bill Maher episode where he shows there's no lights on in North Korea at night, but South Korea.
That was last week. That was last week's episode.
Yeah.
It's very apparent. So to me, I'm just telling you guys, I got to get out there and speak. I appreciate you guys having this podcast because you're great messengers for a common sense movement. I'm an inclusive person socially. People should live their lives the way they see fit. They should have protections over their bodies. They should have also, however they want to live their lives, as long as they're not harming other people, they should be allowed to do so. But the flip side of it is what works and what doesn't. This isn't about left or right to somebody like me?
Yeah.
What are the right or wrong strategies? What are the right or wrong policies that actually work that make people safer and happier? Look at what happened in San Francisco. And now they have a moderate mayor that is cleaning up San Francisco. And
Yeah.
he's doing the things that, frankly, Rudy Giuliani did in the 90s and Mike Bloomberg did in the 2000s, the early 2000s. That's what he's doing. And guess what's that? And by the way, guys, get Bill Bratton on the phone, okay? Bill Bratton will tell you there are 7,000 professional criminals in the 5 boroughs that are terrorizing the 8.5 million of their fellow citizens. 7,000. They know exactly who they are. They know where they live. They know exactly how they operate. And if you give the police department the right to arrest and detain them, you will reduce the crime. You will reduce the shoplifting. You will raise the quality of life. And people in the city, including my beautiful young daughter, will feel safe walking around by themselves in the city. But if you want to give them, and Cuomo, by the way, I like Andrew, but he signed the bail reform, which led to a lot of the catastrophe that we're dealing with.
I will say I learned that lesson recently. I've never called in a favor like you. I've got some friends in the police force and the FBI, but I never called in a favor until my 6-year-old daughter had a bomb threat called into her school. And what I found out from the calls I made was they said, oh, it's one of about 15 people. There's about 15 people that do this. They're mentally unhinged. We have a 90% certainty. They tracked this person down within minutes. And it hit me the realization of the degree to which those bad actors are known, but the courts and the police have their hands tied in permanently removing them from the streets. It was astounding to me. And I remember the conversation I had with my buddy in the FBI. I said, well, at some point, a parent is going to permanently remove them, full stop. And it never really hit me the degree to which the system was tying the hands of the police force. But back to this. Everything you said is 100% right. I'll add one thing. I think also there's a crisis of credibility. And these kids who come to me, some of them are very liberal. Some of them are more conservative. I consider myself a moderate. My conservative friends think I'm liberal. My liberal friends think I'm conservative. They come to me because they've either read the book or I'm in a position where they want to be or whatnot. So I get that credibility. But I can see when I'm speaking to them, they don't want to listen to someone like me. We've lost the ability. There's been a death of expertise, Anthony, is what I'm saying. And I'm really concerned about this because I don't know how to win it back. You and Scott Galloway talk about this crisis of manhood amongst young men. They seem rudderless. They seem to not know where to go. They've been told, don't listen to the people you've been listening to your whole life. Don't listen to the newscasters. Don't listen to politicians. And they're relying on charismatic TikTok figures like Mandami, who sound like they know what they're talking about, but don't. I want to go back to this. How do we get that expertise, that confidence? What do we need to do to earn that back? Or is it all on them?
Well, no. I mean, they have figured out that the messaging works, and so that's what it is. You know, I was with a gentleman today, former cabinet official, had breakfast with him this morning, which is why I was a little late for your podcast. I had to drive back out here, but he said to me something that you should really listen to. If I go in to become a candidate for office, unfortunately, the way to be successful is to start the process of lying. And so Mandami has figured out he's got a message, whether it works or not. The message is resonating with people. Some of them are educated, some of them are not. And so you have to hear me out. It's not a short-term solution, John. Yep. You gotta say right now we're going to bring civics back into the schools. We got rid of that. We've got to end the bail reform stuff. See, the bail reform is based on social justice. So the bail reform argument is black and brown people go to jail for petty crimes. White collar white people rarely go to jail. Somebody could steal billions of dollars and they get a fine. They don't go to jail. But this poor kid that shoplifts, he's going to jail. It's a social justice issue. It's unfair to these people, and they can't afford the bail that the white rich person can. So we're going to equalize this through peace and social justice by having bail reform. That's the issue. And that resonates in the African American and Hispanic American communities.
It resonates with me.
In
I'm not gonna
itself.
lie. Like that, the way you just laid it out,
Yeah.
I
It sells.
optically, I get the unfairness. That doesn't seem like a good system.
It sells. Okay, so you have to go back and say, okay, we have to have greater punishment on white collar crime than we've had historically. In other words, you can't go this way with the crime. You got to go that way. Okay, and you say, I'm very sorry. You can't shoplift to CVS. We can't have everything behind plastic with locks. I'm very sorry. It doesn't work for this civilization, a civilized society. Okay, and we don't want you to feel disadvantaged. We don't want you to feel that you have unequal treatment under the law, but we have to have a certain decorum, okay, to make things work. But then the other thing is, well, I need a job. I would like a job, and you're not hiring me, so you're putting me in a vulnerable position where I'm going out there doing things that are breaking the law in order to survive. So there's an argument that way too. I get that argument as well. But I'm telling you, we have had a social contract breakdown. If you're telling me you want to be a trillionaire and you want your fellow neighbors to suffer and you want to live in a barbed wired security compound in your mansion with your private jet and you want to go to dinner at private dinner clubs in New York and have security while your fellow neighbors are suffering because you need to make $1 trillion, I'm telling you that we're missing now generationally. We're missing the mark as people because an older generation had something called noblesse oblige. They had something that they looked at and they said, okay, we got to make the pay structured in a way that makes people feel aspirational. Henry Ford, talk about anti-Semitism. He was a huge anti-Semite, horrific human being, but he understood social engineering. Henry Ford would say, I got to pay these people enough money so that they can afford the car that they're making. They can live in a single family house. They got to go to a good public school. I don't want them descending upon my Dearborn, Michigan mansion with pitchforks and tiki torches while I'm carving up my steak, eating my caviar, drinking my champagne. And we don't do that anymore. Now, these guys want to make $1 trillion. They want to flout everything in order to make $1 trillion. And, Teddy Roosevelt, who is really considered the father, this is the irony, he was a Republican, but he's considered the father of the progressive movement. He was called a progressive. He brought the robber barons into the White House and said, knock it off. You can't do this. It's not going to help us. He busted them. Okay, he trust busted them. He went, Geffner knows this from property law. There was a very famous Dutch journalist by the name of Jacob Riis. He wrote a passage, How the Other Half Lived. Roosevelt was the police commissioner, Teddy, at the time of New York. He read this thing and said, the tenements are falling down. Now, maybe he didn't like Irish, maybe he didn't like Italians, but he didn't want them dead in a collapsing tenement house, right? And so you gotta see the things for the way it is. You gotta rebuild that trust and rebuild that contract with the people in the country that are looking for leaders like the two of you and perhaps me for hope. They're looking for, hey, he's going to hand me the baton of aspiration. We're not doing that, John. Nobody's doing that.
One other point I want to bring up.
To it, John. There's an indifference to it.
So one other point. So as we're sitting here having the conversation, and my head's going to the future, obviously, I sit here and I say, AI. Doesn't AI actually make this problem worse? Because any job that can be replaced with technology will, and they tend to be on average certain trades. Now, I'm not talking about electricians and carpenters, although I've now seen robots building houses in other parts of the world. What are your thoughts on the effect that AI is going to have on the problem?
Well, again, it's a matter of policy, right? AI could benefit the problem if it's structured properly. I'll give you an example. The teachers' unions have the control of the public school system. Now, some people don't like that. They have charter schools. I'm a realist, okay? We're going to educate the majority of our children through public schools. So therefore, we have to figure out a way to work with the teachers' union. But one of the things we can do, you can have AI technology alongside of the teacher tutoring the kids and helping the kids and interacting with the kids as a teacher, as a teaching vessel. And if you put the protocols in place, even though you have AI that everyone could lean on, you could have the AI be interactive and force people into a deep thinking mode for themselves, and it could be additive. Moreover, We're going to lose some jobs, maybe some white collar jobs as a result of AI, but we're not going to be, if we handle this right structurally, AI, robotic technology, et cetera, could make us all richer. We may even be able to move to a 4-day work week, okay, which would increase leisure, potentially increase quality of life and mental health. So if you're telling me we're going to go full on Armageddon with AI, and we're going to be totally indifferent to the poor and totally indifferent to the working families and dislocate everybody with great hardship and without any compassion, then we're going to be in a dystopian situation with AI. It's going to be quite apocalyptic. You've got a tool that we can use that can benefit humankind. We have that tool. You have to tell me what direction we're going. You see, to me, we have a vacuum in the culture as it relates to moral leadership. We have a vacuum in the culture as it relates to tribalism. Our politicians are literally peeing on each other. They say the most ridiculous, dehumanizing things to each other, and they viciously attack each other to the point where most of the public has tuned out. Okay, you want an entrepreneurial challenge? Think of it this way. There's 100 million people. They vote the exact same way in every American election. Those are the non-voters, guys. Okay, they have compulsory voting in Australia. What does it do? It liquidates the extremes and it forces these campaigns are marketing competitions. It forces the marketing competition into something more moderate. But in our country, we don't have that. But there's 100 million people. Think of the entrepreneurial opportunity to go 0 to 1 on those people. And if you got those people into the swimming pool with the rest of the other voters, you could change the whole dynamic of the country, and you could change it for the better.
Anthony, you mentioned the level of discourse.
That's it. That's the challenge before us. That's the hope. By the way, we failed, you and me, Geffner. That's the hope for DiAgostino's generation. Hopefully we can find younger leaders.
I'm actually in his generation, just in my defense. I was born in 66.
Let me ask you this final question.
You are, but you're not dyeing your hair as artfully as I'm dyeing my hair. Okay, so you're in his generation. I'm in the older generation that failed the country, but that's the opportunity. And so, are you going to mentor a young political leader? Is John going to go into politics or mentor a young political leader that's going to help reshape this thing and move it? And by the way, here's the thing about America. Okay. Anybody doubting America, they don't get America, because America gets its ass kicked. 600,000 people die in the Civil War. We go through a period of reflection, and then we go through a period of renewal. America goes through the Great Depression. It gets its ass kicked in the Depression and the World War. And they come out of it with reflection and renewal, and we had more or less 80 years of prosperity until we've gotten into this recent crisis. And it doesn't need to be this way, guys. So we can fix it, by the way. It's totally fixable.
I think that's a great way to end it. I had another question for you, but I think that was very poignant. So,
could we just give Anthony one quick opportunity to talk about the book? I know you wrote a book recently.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I don't have it here, but I wrote a book on Solana. Book party's October 3rd, by the way. I hope you guys.
December 3rd. Yeah.
Thank you.
No, you're in the credits, of course. Yeah. Of course. I mean, you were great. Hopefully you guys can come to the Hunt and Fish Club on December 3rd. But I think there's a couple of layer one protocols that are going to really reshape the world, reshape Wall Street. Solana is one of them.
I agree.
And so I wrote a 225-page book with John DiAgostino's help and others, talking about the technological prowess of Solana and why I think Solana will be a big part of the future of tokenization, the future of creating lots of liquidity on real world assets. Mm-hmm. And Coinbase will be a big part of that. Solana will be a big part of that. And the goal is to try to educate people and help them go into the future without fear. Because when we have technological change, Ron mentioned the AI. When you have technological change, you get a lot of fear. Trust me, there were a lot of horse and buggy people that did not like the horseless carriages and didn't want the horseless carriages, and every time that we've moved into a different technology, Geffner and I are old enough, DiAgostino, to remember the advent of email and the advent of the internet. And many people in our generation were like, what the hell is that? We don't want that. We don't need that. But we got it. Okay. And it turns out it's more efficient. It's better. We're doing trillions of dollars of business online. We're able to do this type of conversation that George Jetson would have been proud of. Okay, we can do this type of conversation. And so the real question before us is, are we going to get comfortable with the future? And the book is about how to make people comfortable.
Anthony, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me here.